So I think it's amazing. It's amazing that all of you are here to join my friends from Hollywood High School. So emoluments. So let's talk emoluments. The framers of the Constitution and the founders of our country were so worried about a single paramount danger in the conflicts area that they put only one conflicts rule in the Constitution. They put it in 2 places. And that rule is found in the Foreign Emoluments Clause and the Domestic Emoluments Clause. Think of emoluments as we are, after all, in LA, the swag bags they give at the Oscars. That's what emoluments are. Cash or other swag. And our founders and our framers were so worried that a president might be influenced by foreign governments providing swag, or the federal government providing benefits on top of salary, or a state government, or a county or a city government, that they forbade a president from accepting any of these goodies. That's what emoluments are, and they put it in the Constitution. This was not an abstract theoretical worry, Areva, because at the time that the Constitution was written, now you know I was there, so I'm authoritative. At the time the Constitution was written, it was a common practice for foreign sovereigns to give emoluments, to give things of value to the leaders, the rulers, the legislators of other countries. So the Bourbon throne, the French throne, bought off the British throne for decades. They bent policy by paying off the kings of Britain, and with our own. Famously, with our own American rulers. When Benjamin Franklin left France, they gave him a jeweled snuff box and created a tremendous scandal in the United States, then subject to the Articles of Confederacy. A scandal. Have the French attempted to buy him off like they did King George with this snuff box. So this practice was very, very common, and that's what the founders and the framers were worried about. It is not peripheral. This is a core provision, and it's a core danger, and it's as if they wrote the Constitution seeing the rise of a Donald Trump.
Well, let me ask you this, Norm. Listening to the pundits that have been all over television, from CNN to Fox News, they always say that there is no conflict, and we keep hearing that over and over again. And some of the arguments they use is that Trump himself is not receiving a personal benefit. So what are the arguments that you are making, or your team of lawyers that have filed these actions based on that clause? How are you dealing with how are you countering the arguments that we hear from the Trump side?
When people say that, I say that's a damn lie.
Well, that's a great statement here.
Why? It's a lie.
Tell us the legal basis, in addition to the common sense basis.
Who is it who said there's lies and there's damn lies, and that's a damn lie? Donald Trump broke a 4-decade bipartisan practice ever since the passage of the Ethics in Government Act, which was passed in 1978 in the wake of the Nixon scandals that those of you came to hear my friend John Dean talk about. Presidents had felt that they had to give up. They had to formally sever their relationships to their businesses. We never had one who had as many conflicts as Donald Trump and his businesses, but still. And the presidents would do this by generally using something called a blind trust, okay, where you take your properties, you give them to the trustee to sell, and then the trustee reinvests the proceeds in stuff you don't know about as president, so it can't influence you at all. He doesn't tell you. Well, Donald Trump has hung on to his businesses. He has maintained, I would call it if you could use the word transparency around Trump, but you can't. You could call it a seeing trust, a see-through trust. It's the opposite of what you should do. He gave these properties to his kids, and the kids come in and give him regular reports. They admit regular reports on the functioning of the businesses, and he's kept his financial interest in these businesses. So the tax cut plan, he's got a huge conflict. He's going to benefit from those taxes. When he did his execrable Muslim ban, shame for those who were surprised by General Kelly's behavior at the podium in the briefing room. He supported that Muslim ban when he was at DHS. It's shameful. Those countries were all countries Donald Trump didn't do business in. Guess what? He didn't ban anyone from a country where he did business. So wherever you look, there's a conflict because he's hung on to these businesses. It's legally insufficient. It means these emoluments are coming in, starting with his hotel just down the block from the White House and stretching out all over the world. He's raking in the cash.
So let me ask you this from a legal standpoint. If you're successful, and it sounds like you have a trove of evidence to present to the court, what would the outcome be? Would the court order, was this some kind of injunctive action that the court would order? Could the court force Trump to put these properties in this blind trust that you described? What is the desired outcome? We
have asked the court to find that the president would be an order. It'd say the president is violating the emoluments clause, and I order the president to stop violating the emoluments clause. Then it would be, in the first instance, I think it will be up to the president and us. You know this, Areva, because you litigate a lot. We'd sit together with the government lawyers and say, okay, he's got to stop doing it. Now, what's he going to do? Is he going to set up a blind trust? Is he going to divest? Maybe he's going to give all the properties away as a gift to his kids. Yeah, right. Spy Magazine once had a contest for the cheapest celebrity. Do you all know about this? They sent smaller and smaller checks to see which celebrity would cash the smallest check. And Trump was still going at 13 cents. So I don't think he's giving away those properties, but we'd have that conversation.
But the goal is for the court to order him to stop violating.
Yes, stop violating, and what are you going to do about it? Then we'd have a conversation about what we're going to do. But realistically speaking, the most likely is that he would have to set up a genuine blind trust of some kind, which he could have done. I talked, when we were researching these, I talked to Wall Street experts who deal with enormous financial enterprises. The Trump enterprise is essentially a large and complex family business. They said it would not be that hard to figure out a financial vehicle to gradually make this transition, so that's what we would ask for as a legal matter.
So what's the status currently of the loss? Is it one lawsuit or multiple lawsuits?
3 lawsuits. There's one, we had a hearing last week in New York. There's 3 hours in a federal court in New York. The lawyers arguing both sides. There's a very good write-up in the New York Times, and then a nice editorial about it as well, but it was in all the media. If you want to look last week, New York Times editorial page, they really captured the gist, and I thought the reporter did a nice job of capturing the back and forth. The big issue in the case is, I don't think there's serious doubt that Trump is violating the emoluments clause. The big issue in the case is who has the right to go to court and complain about it.
They're challenging your stand.
It's a big standing fight that we had. But the good news is that's not the only case. If he says, well...
So let me ask you, so that one case in New York,
yes,
the argument before the court was overstanding. So who had the right to
Well, we discussed both standing, the question of who has the right to complain, to go to court. We also discussed the merits of the emoluments, too.
But there's no order yet.
No order yet. Court has said it'll rule in 30 to 60 days. So
Okay,
we're
so
expecting the first one 30 to 60 days.
Okay.
Let me just step in for a minute because I forgot to say, if you have a question, there's a group of young people. Would you please stand up, the youth from the National Foster Youth Institute? These are our next generation of community activists. They are going to help transform the nation's child welfare system.
Yes,
and so they're doing
yes,
double duty tonight. They will be collecting the cards. So if and when you have a question, write your question down and just wave, and one of them will come pick it up.
Great. Okay, so that's lawsuit number one. So tell us the status of the other two.
So the second lawsuit, so you might say, oh, Crew is a plaintiff. My watchdog group is a plaintiff in one. I'm here only in my personal capacity, however, so I'm just speaking from my personal capacity. You might say, well, can a watchdog group sue? Okay, if you can't do that, then competitors. We also have competitors, hotels and restaurants. We say, okay, competitors, hotels and restaurants, if they can't sue, then who might be able to? Well, maybe states can sue. So we have two states, the District of Columbia and Maryland, two state AGs who have courageously brought the lawsuit. That's the next one that's coming in Maryland. And then the members of Congress have also brought a lawsuit, senators and members of the House of Representatives. So there's three separate cases moving through the courts, Areva. Surely somebody, that's every possible plaintiff who could bring a suit. So how can they say no to everyone?
And are they all in?
No, they're in different
New York,
courts.
so
The
New York?
competitors and the watchdog are in New York. The states are in Maryland. One of the plaintiffs is in Maryland. And the third case, the congressional case, is in D.C. So it's in three different courts.
So I know you get asked this all the time, and all of us that have been working on these issues with Donald Trump, the real question people want to know is, can we get rid of him? Any of these lawsuits or any of these legal actions going to lead to impeachment, Norm?
Well,
Why or why not?
The answer is that we don't know if any of these are going to lead to impeachment. We don't know the answer to that. And for those who are concerned about the assaults of Donald Trump on the Constitution, on the laws of the United States, on our values, on our norms. This is one norm gets assault and assaults back. The assault on the ethical norms. For those who are concerned about that, it will come as no surprise to you. I'm going to answer your question, Areva. It's a complicated question. It'll come as no surprise that Donald Trump has come so close to the line of criminality, he may have gone over the line. I think the greatest danger, the greatest risk to him comes from the special counsel, Bob Mueller, and the risk that Donald Trump obstructed justice, that with a corrupt motive, he fired Comey, a pattern of demanding loyalty, asking him whether he could see his way to drop the Flynn investigation. And when he said no, he fired him. And then admitted on national television his thinking. You don't often get the grand jury nationally televised. That was very unusual. I don't know where we'd be in the resistance without our greatest ally, Donald Trump. The mouth of Trump is the most powerful resistance weapon. So that is the greatest, but it's an unknown question. And one of the most, and we're going to talk about this because it's very important, people say, and Areva and I were talking about this in the green room that actually was green. What can you actually do?
But Norm, you just said the greatest challenge is Mueller.
Yes.
But he can't, some experts, legal experts, some of whom we like and not like so much.
Yes, I know who you're talking about.
There's disagreement over whether, even if Mueller finds obstruction of justice, that he can actually pursue criminal charges against Trump.
Well, what he can, there is a disagreement about that. You're right. And you should know, this was briefed to the Supreme Court in Nixon. And Jim St. Clair, Nixon's lawyer, briefed it, and Leon Jaworski, the then special prosecutor, briefed it, whether a president can be criminally charged. DOJ takes the position, the Office of Legal Counsel, president's lawyers, take the position historically that a president cannot be criminally charged. I think it's an unsettled question. And I've written about both sides. There's nobody who says they know the answer for sure. I think the better answer, if we litigated it, if Mueller charged him and we went to court, I think it'd end up in the Supreme Court, and for the same reasoning that animated the Paula Jones case, we would find that no person is above the law.
Right.
And a president can be charged. But it's an unsettled question. But here's what he can do, at a minimum. He can do what Jaworski did. He can charge Trump as an unindicted co-conspirator, because this was the allegation is it was a conspiracy. People in the White House talking together about relieving the pressure. So that once that happens, then the pressure's on Congress to do something. He can go further, and Jaworski did this too. He can seek permission from the grand jury to have a grand jury report to Congress of the illegal conduct, if it turns out to be illegal conduct. In another job that I'm not here in an official role, I'm just here in my personal role, I just wrote a 200-page report on these obstruction of justice issues. So if you Google my name and obstruction of justice, you'll find that report.
Has any other president, to your knowledge, been sued, one, as much as Trump, 150 or so matters, but two, under this emoluments clause? Have we seen any president challenged under this clause?
First time in American history, when we went to court and sat at the in the courtroom in the Southern District of New York, and they all rise, everybody stands up. You have a judge here, so he knows how that is. And we stood up, and the judge came in the courtroom. That was the first moment in American history, in our almost 3 centuries as a nation, where any president, there's a constitutional term, chutzpah, any president had the chutzpah to take these emoluments and dare someone, take me to court, sue me if you don't like it. That's Trump's, he's probably got it on his t-shirt. Sue me if you don't like it. We've never seen anybody who wallows in the muck of litigation as it's just another business tool for Donald Trump, and we discover that it's a political tool for him too.
Is he being defended by Department of Justice lawyers or his outside private lawyers?
In our case, we've sued him in his official capacity, and he's being defended by the Department of Justice lawyers. Very capable.
Can you explain the hearing about the White House counsel and that his role is allegedly to represent the presidency, the institution, the office, not Trump as an individual, but yet there seems to be a lot of...
This White House counsel was absent on the day when they taught that in law school.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of confusion about what his actual
He was
role
playing
is.
hooky. He was playing hooky.
What is the role
Look,
of House counsel?
Of course, I worked in the White House. I worked in the White House counsel's office. I saw up close how it operates. And I will say, I've said this publicly on our network, this is the worst White House counsel in American history. I mean, this guy is the worst one since they started the position. And he's enabled this bad behavior by Trump. For those of us who've watched his career, he did the same thing. He developed his career, Mr. McGahn, at the FEC, at the Federal Elections Commission, and he considered it his job to dismantle as much election enforcement as he possibly could at the FEC. And now he's taken that a step further. He's dismantling the rule of law as the White House counsel, and it's shocking. It's really awful, and President Trump is ill-served. If you'd had a president behaving the way President Trump was when we were working in the White House, you would have had a mass resignation. And these lawyers, their job is, my nickname when I was in the White House was Mr. No. And I had worse ones, Areva. I was shocked. They wrote a newspaper story about me, and I was shocked that one of my friends in the White House says, well, behind his back, we call him the fun sponge. That hurt my feelings. Mr. No. There is no Mr. No
in the White House.
Over there. They have to call that guy Mr. Go Ahead. Do whatever you want, Mr. Do whatever you want. That's what they ought to call him. So it's terrible.
So talk to us, Norm, about the basis for some of the other lawsuits. So we talked about the emoluments clause. What are some of the other lawsuits that your agency has filed?
Well, you name it, and we've sued it. We've sued the president. We've sued the members of the cabinet agencies. We've filed regulatory complaints. We've filed ethics complaints, Hatch Act complaints, and we don't do it. I'm not involved in all this litigation in my watchdog group and otherwise. Just because I like suing, and I'm not getting paid. So, you know, that's really runs against our lawyerly ethos, Areva.
Yes, it does.
They taught us that's the first thing they teach you at Harvard Law School.
Get paid a lot.
Paid as much as possible. So
they also taught us about public service.
They
so
did.
Be fair.
They did. After the class on getting paid.
You got to get paid in order to do your public service. You make a lot of money so you can give back.
So we're doing it because our beautiful American system of checks and balances is not self-executing. It only works if somebody goes to court and files that first lawsuit. And when we started doing this early, we were the first to file a complaint against President Trump. Again, I'm speaking in my personal capacity. And then it kept going. People were nervous about doing that, right? What's the retaliation? What's going to happen? But one of the beautiful things has been that for all the legal activity that I've done, there's been an incredible outpouring of community activism. And I actually believe, it's an article of faith for me, I believe that our democracy, I believe in the genius of our democracy, the brilliance of our system. You're seeing now how brave the courts have been to stand up against Trump again and again and again. And the people turning out. And I think our democracy is going to emerge from this even stronger. And that's the reason that we're constantly holding Trump. And it's not just my watchdog group, it's all the watchdog groups in Washington, all the people across the country who are active in so many different ways, constantly holding the administration accountable. And there have been some significant wins along the way.
Let's talk about some of these major policy issues that I think everyday people are really concerned about, from healthcare to DACA. What role will lawyers or agencies like yours, these watchdog groups, play in trying to thwart or prevent some of these drastic changes like to our healthcare system? And I really worry about these young people who are in our country, and the deadline is supposed to be March of next year, and it doesn't seem like Congress is taking any action that we can see towards an immigration fix. So what role will lawyers play in trying to address some of these major policy issues?
I do think that lawyers have a critical, central role to play in all this. Our profession was in need of an injection of heroism, and
they were looking for some heroes, and we stood up.
And we stood up. We did. We stood up. I actually thought I hung up my law practice. I certainly, if you'd have told me a year ago I would be working on it's 152 plus now, 152 plus cases, I would have thought I wouldn't have believed it. And because I had my law practice and then my government service, and then went on to work in a think tank. But so I think there's a very important role for lawyers in doing this. That is the historic role. It breaks my heart to see the injustice and the cruelty of the Trump administration. And DACA, that is one of what he's doing, that yo-yo, you know, yes, I'm in favor, no, I'm against, maybe I'll deal with it, maybe I won't. It's just shameful. My father, both my parents came to this country as refugees. My father came in 1940 on the last boat out of Greece, made his way from Warsaw to Greece, and he came on a tourist visa, 10-day tourist visa, and stayed for decades. Served in the Army, was undocumented migrant on that 11th day, and worked jobs with no, that would stiff him on his pay. He had no recourse for that. Served in the military, earned his green card, became a citizen, and then brought my mom over in 1950 or 51. And they ended up here in Los Angeles. So I have all of these, but the health care. But look at the health care, okay?
Well, let me ask you,
we pushed back on that, and we were successful in stopping. Now Trump is trying his next thing. Now we're trying our next thing with the Alexander Murray deal. So, I think that the story is we're pushing back and we're fighting, and that's where democracy is. It's in everybody who's turned out tonight. And before we finish, I want to talk about the specific things that everybody can do. It's everybody who turned out tonight on the first game of the World Series back in the room. And I didn't have to pay for a single person to come here other than my 5 friends. I'm going to buy them dinner.
But can the courts, Norm, stop some of these executive orders that Trump keeps signing?
Yes.
So can your group or other agencies go to court and prevent the DACA executive order from, taking place and preventing these young people from being deported?
Another one of we can, and it's happening. The litigators are swarming the courts, thousands of these cases being filed. There's DACA litigation. There's very important on the healthcare litigation. The states, 18 state attorneys general, have gone to court to say Trump can't cut off the subsidies.
Right.
So I do think that the courts are a bulwark, important line of defense. And our genius president, he makes it a habit of attacking the courts. Well, look at the judgments that he's been getting. He's not helping. He's not helping his own cause. He ought to get out there and praise the judges instead of attacking them, but he can't help himself.
Talk about some of the wins. You said that some of these agencies that have filed these lawsuits have had some wins in the courts.
The people say people are upset about impunity in Washington. So I was involved in one matter where a government official was abusing official resources for a political purpose. So we said, well, we're going to file a complaint. They found that it was a violation and told him a cease and desist. If he does it again, they're going to move against him. Then another one did the same thing. We filed another complaint. You had Kellyanne Conway. She got on television. Basically, she said, buy Ivanka Trump's products.
Right.
Well, you can't do that. It's just not allowed. So, and the worst thing? They actually tried to discipline her in the White House. The guy who has my old job, that's got to be the worst job in Washington. Tried to discipline, tried to say to her, now if that happened in Obama, you have your walk-in papers. You'd be on the unemployment line. You wouldn't even make it through the day. This guy disciplined her, and I heard that the president called him in the Oval Office and said, why are you being so mean to Kellyanne? So it's topsy-turvy. It's topsy-turvy. And but that Office of Government Ethics, they sanctioned Kellyanne. So that's how the battles, it goes back to your impeachment question, Areva. This is not a a single swing for the fences, a home run. You're going to win. Even in baseball, what's the score, by the way? Anybody got it? Still 3-1. Well, what inning is it? Top of the ninth. Let's all go across the parking lot and watch the television in the office.
They're already watching the one.
I won't be offended. You go on and watch it on your smartphone. Won't offend me in the slightest. It's not, even in baseball you can't hit a home run. I was watching the very first pitch of the game. That gentleman hit a home run, but you can't win the game with the single home run ball. You've got to play all the innings, and these are each at-bats. And that's what this 150 that I alone, 150 plus cases that I'm involved in, and the thousands of others, they're each an at-bat. Okay, we are swarming, just as where we started, the founders and framers, just as they envisioned. It's like a colonial era airbag that hasn't deployed in 250 years, and we're like, we're blowing up that airbag, one puff at a time. That should be the. That is not, I know what some of you are thinking, and that is not what I meant. Shame on you, and especially my old friends. Look at them laughing. Shame on you. We're inflating that airbag, that constitutional airbag. That is and there's so much more to the checks and balances. It's not just, we often think it's tripartite, right? You got the Congress, and they have looked into Trump. It's not as strong as we would like, but they have been looking into Trump Russia. You have the courts, we've been talking about that. You have Trump's own executive branch. Like these complaints that I described to you where we were successful, that came from inside Trump's own executive branch, from career government officials. But there's more. There's the state attorneys general who are fighting DACA, who are fighting for the health care subsidies not to be removed. So much more that the AGs are doing. There's the press. Right? There's our brave colleagues who interview us on TV. They have been so instrumental. Sometimes they make a mistake. They keep on going. That's fantastic. And then ultimately, there's all of you. And that's really where the energy of our democracy is. So those checks and balances are all working. I wish we didn't have to use them all. But to me, it's inspiring to see that it's happening, and I prefer to look at the resistance, at the loyal opposition, rather than and celebrate that, rather than look at the cause, the stimulus of all our hard work, and mourn that.
What about, you mentioned Ivanka and Kellyanne, and we know there have been some actions against cabinet members.
The boy Prince, let's not forget.
Yes.
Jared
and Price.
Trump Jr.
So are there actual lawsuits against cabinet members or family members pending?
There's so many of these characters. I hope the game goes into extra innings so we can keep getting the updates. Yes, there are lawsuits pending. Some of the most important lawsuits that are pending, we want to see, President Obama was very proud to be a part of this. We put virtually every visitor to the White House online. So you could see who was coming and going. That's the people's house. Right. And you and I and everybody here has a right to know who's coming and going. Well, guess what? One of the first things Trump did when he got there was to shut that down. It's like he took a bucket of paint and painted over the window so you couldn't see what was going on inside. Can I tell a funny story about that? Do we have time? If I make it fast?
Stay on track.
Somebody asked me on your card, Norm, tell us your funny story. I want to know if y'all are my friends or not. Okay, but I won't tell. I got to listen to the moderator. Okay, I won't tell. But I will say that, yes, I think one of the most important lawsuits, we have a lawsuit going, who is coming to the White House? How can you hide that? And who's coming to Mar-a-Lago, where you can pay? Well, you and I can't pay. We can't afford it, but the people who can afford it can pay for access to a president who has spent 1 out of 4 days of his presidency after complaining about President Obama's golf. He spent 25% of the days of his presidency playing golf at his own courses, and a third of the presidency, a third of the days of the presidency, he's had at least one visit to one of his own properties. It's like a home shopping network. He took over to merchandise the Trump operation using the White House as a TV set. It's shameful.
Two other issues I want to. Couldn't hear you. Thank you for that update. So we got two topics I want to cover. One is taxes. So much discussion before the election, post-election about Trump's tax returns. Are we going to get them? And if so, what is the vehicle that's being used to try to force him to reveal his taxes?
Well, his taxes are, we haven't had a modern president who's hidden his taxes like this. And one question you have to ask yourself is, why is he hiding the taxes? Now, I believe, bipartisan experts believe, that the reason he's hiding these taxes is because it's got the information about his foreign dealings and the Russia dealings are in there. And we've already learned a lot, right? He said, no Russia, no puppet. And then it turns out that Michael Cohen, his own aide, wrote a direct letter to Putin's top aide during the campaign, during the Republican primary, saying, we need this property, it's very important in Moscow. So we think there's going to be more stuff like that, and there's a lot of tax forms that have information about foreign business.
So are these lawsuits, any of them targeting the taxes?
Well, the taxes are gonna, we know there's been press reports that the special counsel is talking to the IRS. So he's trying to get a hold of them, and if there's improprieties, that'll be provided to Congress. And it may be, you know, in order to, look, we didn't bring our lawsuits to get the taxes. We brought our lawsuits to defend the Constitution. But we may need the taxes in order to defend the Constitution. So you're going to see in this proliferation, you can't hide stuff. This is the era of transparency. And we've already seen one of Trump's tax returns leaked onto television, so we'll see if others come out.
All right. Russia. Can't have an evening talking about Trump without talking about Russia. And we know there's a special counsel investigation, there's a congressional investigation, there's a Senate investigation. One of the things that really puzzled me is when I was watching Jeff Sessions in his recent testimony before one of the congressional bodies, he didn't seem to have a sense of urgency about the need for the Department of Justice to be investigating what happened with Russia, specifically as it relates to our elections. So what's happening with Trump and Russia in terms of collusion is one issue, but I think all of us are concerned about 2018, 2020 elections. We've heard about all these fake Facebook accounts and social media accounts. What is happening from a legal standpoint, if any of these agencies, is there anything being done to force more attention, corrective action or something to prevent Russia from meddling in our future elections?
Well, first of all, if there's anybody who has less sense of urgency than Jeff Sessions anywhere, I'd like to meet him. That was one of the great moments when my friend, your Senator Kamala Harris, tried to ask him some questions in what for me would be a slow pace, okay? That was not a fast-paced line of questioning. He says, You're flustering me. Don't ask so fast. So he's got no urgency about anything except taking civil rights away. That's when we tell him you can take a civil right away. Then he gets excited. Other than that, slow moving. And Russia, you know, that I never thought I'd see an attorney general get up there and testify as he did.
Poorly.
He should be demoted down to attorney private or something below. Does not deserve the title of Attorney General. So, fortunately, and it's one of the most important things, I've spent a lot of time doing it, we need to speak out and against the efforts of the White House to block the Mueller investigation. You know, the president was, I know Bob Mueller. I've been adverse to him in cases. I've been on the same side of cases as Director Mueller, and he'll play it straight. And that is the best hope that we have. And the greatest danger is that Trump decides to shut that investigation down.
But that investigation is about uncovering whether there was collusion with the Trump administration. I guess I'm more concerned about actions going forward to prevent, because our intelligence departments have already told us that they meddled in our elections. So we don't need Mueller to tell us that. We already know that. That's been proven unequivocally. So how do we force, if we can force, the administration to take these intelligence reports seriously and do something to stop the invasion into our election process for 2018?
I don't think you're going to see either certainly not in the House, but probably not in the Senate, direct negative findings against Trump. But I do think that you're going to see a recommendation out of the Warner-Burr panel. You're going to see a recommendation on remedies. I know that they want to do something, and I believe they are serious about doing something preventative to prevent this from happening again. But the best prevention that we have is to make this next election such a wave, and you're going to hear about this when we take our break, what y'all can do, to make this such a wave election that even when Mr. Putin, Vladimir Vladimirovich, as they used to call him when I was stationed in Central Europe, that even when he does come and find new ways, we're going to block one set of ways, he'll find some other ways. But the wave is powerful enough to overwhelm and wash away those efforts. And even with all of the improprieties and the meddling and the things that were done that should not have been done to sabotage the Clinton campaign, it still was a very, very close election. It was decided by a few tens of thousands of people, less than would fill a football stadium in 3 states.
Right.
So with all that, if we'd have just had a little more wave, I guess that's our doing the wave, it's our baseball theme tonight. And that's really a part of, we're going to talk more about this, that's part what all of us can do. I know I ask myself, every day I ask myself, is there a single voter, is there a single friend I know anywhere who I can call up and persuade to act, to call Congress, to sign a petition, to join a march, to vote, to get a friend to vote, to drive somebody to vote? It's going to be that kind of individual action that is going to inspire the wave that hopefully will be large enough to cancel out the inevitable interference. It's coming, but we got to be bigger and stronger than that.
So I just want to end this part of the program talking about email servers, private email servers. We heard so much about that during the campaign, the whole focus on Clinton and her use of a private email server. And now in the report, there's been some reporting about Trump advisors, Jared for one, using private email service to conduct government business. But it doesn't seem like it's gotten, and it's hard to any news to break through with Trump, so I understand why it hasn't broken through in the way that perhaps we would want it to. But are you aware of any actions that are moving forward to address this whole issue that we were told was the most catastrophic thing that could happen in government that now seems to be so inconsequential? Yeah, lock her up, lock them up.
The hypocrisy of it
it's just
is staggering. Not that I'm endorsing those email practices, by the way, and Secretary Clinton apologized for them. These are the subject. The answer, Areva, is yes. These practices are the subject of litigation. These emails are being subpoenaed. Mueller is going after them. There is a saying, John Dean will tell you this is true. It profoundly affected his life. It's not the crime, it's the cover-up. And the trouble, I I lost track of how many lies I counted in some of these testimonies that are coming out. And people are very upset that, for example, that Mr. Kushner did not disclose some of these email practices when he was speaking behind closed doors to Congress. So those emails are not going to... I just read a report today that some of the emails have been transferred, that Jared and Ivanka transferred emails back to the Trump organization. Mm-hmm. Well, it's like, I call it the ostrich legal strategy. You know, somebody's going to dig. You think the emails are going to remain protected at the Trump organization? That's the worst place to transfer. So I think that, you know, these emails are going to come out, and it is the subject of litigation and investigation in multiple venues. Boy, I'm in such a good mood because the Dodgers won. Such a great mood.
I just one last question. This week's news, you know, it's so quick and it comes just so fast, it's hard to keep up with it. But yesterday's news was Trump interviewing lawyers in the Department of Justice in states like New York and Florida, where he has properties where he may be vulnerable. And Eric Holder was on a program yesterday talking about not being illegal, but it seems like there are all of these practices that are not technically illegal, but they're perhaps unethical, or they definitely run counter to what the practice has been for decades. Is there anything we can do in those situations where we have such blatant attempts to, obviously influence the attorney generals who might be involved in an investigation against Trump in a particular state, and now he calls them up and he's interviewing them, the pressure they must feel as a member of, he is their boss ultimately. So I worry about all these practices that are being violated, but they're not illegal.
This is the assault on the norms.
Yeah.
And, the answer is to call attention to them. There's such a volume that it's hard to have sustained attention.
Yes.
But that's okay. You do the best you can. I have written since Trump's election probably 40 op-eds. I just had another one. It's my own personal scream into the void, but USA Today prints. And I've had them in the New York Times and the Washington Post, and I very seldom have one turned down. I just wrote one about another one of these issues. Trump says, I will pay $430,000 worth of legal bills for my aides. But what message is he sending to make sure, they wants them to know he's going to pay their bills? I think we all know what that message is. And this thing of interviewing the U.S. attorneys, can you imagine if you get pulled over for speeding, you say, I'd like to interview some of the police officers to see if anybody would decide not to write me a ticket. Can you send some of your... I understand, officer, but do you have any friends? Can I interview them? I'll wait right here. It's bizarre, but what we have to do is we just have to take them one after the other. So I'll keep writing those op-eds. And look, again, in the good news, I am an inveterate optimist. And it would be hard to keep going otherwise in this environment. We were talking before, and Areva said, well, with Trump as president, and sometimes the shock of it hits you. So I told her, pinch me. I hope this is all a horrible dream. And you have to be an optimist to keep going, right? But part of the optimism is the American people are not falling for this. The poll ratings, we've never seen a president dwindling down in the low. Some polls have him down in the low 30s. We've never seen a president fighting this horrible fight he's having with the Gold Star mom. How agonizing when you give a child to the values, the things that we believe in, that we that we fight for around the world, and then the man is having a public feud. The American people are not stupid. They see this, and he has historically low popularity ratings, favorability ratings. That should also be encouraging. So I think it does have a cumulative. It's my op-eds. It's those 40 op-eds and the 152 lawsuits.
Well, let's give Norm a big round of applause.
On behalf of the doctors, I accept your ovation.
All of your op-eds, your lawsuits, and your advocacy. Thank you so much. The first one is, can't several of Trump's actions be seen as treasonable? This is a law school exam, real quickly.
Technically, they are not treason. The technical definition of treason requires there to be the actions to occur at a time when there's a formal declaration of war. Okay? Now we know we're without proper congressional investigation, we're mired in wars all over the place, but as a technical matter, however, I will tell you that as a matter of, this is why I hesitate, as a matter of reality, the reason that the Russia question is so crucial is we've never had, the president's behavior is so bizarre as to Russia. Over and over and over again. And the latest thing, it was in one of the cards, is he's not enforcing the congressional sanctions against Russia. The guy has a blind spot. Whatever the right thing is to do on Russia, he does the opposite. And to have him right after he fired Comey, I mean, if that doesn't smack of disloyalty, he has sneaks the Russian ambassador and the Russian foreign minister into the Oval Office. We never would have seen the pictures if Russia hadn't released them. And he's laughing. He says Comey was a crazy man and was under great pressure because of Russia. That's gone now. That's terrible. I don't know if it's treason, but it's terrible. It's not loyal. It's not right.
So you would say no. We cannot.
That was a no.
We're friends.
That was a no.
Okay, next question. Why can't we just get him declared as unfit and unable to fully discharge the powers and duties of the presidency? That would be quick and fast.
Yes. 25th Amendment. The 25th Amendment. The problem is that right now we do not have the